complaint. If you don't mention that it's being investigated or mention that you filed an investigation with another agency but you don't know the status, we will call. Now, a lot of times, let's say the Georgia Department of Education is investigating something for you. They might not have talked to you for a year. As soon as we talk to them, they call us back in 2 or 3 days.
Oh, okay.
So at least then you can find out, we can tell you, okay, your investigation is actually being investigated or they're not doing anything else with it. And now you have the opportunity to know, okay, do I need to go back to them or should I go ahead and go forward with my point of view? Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Okay. Well, okay.
All right. Going back to this. So we're also going to look at, when did this different treatment occur? Did this different treatment occur in the course of authorized assigned duties or responsibilities of employees? So was this a teacher in the classroom? Was this an administrator? Was this, some sort of teacher's aide or paraprofessional helping out? When did it occur and what was the nature of the treatment? Also, does this different treatment deny or limit the ability of the student to participate or benefit from the school program activity? So that goes to, what we were talking about earlier with tracking. Are certain students not able to take full advantage of, the college preparatory activities because they're being tracked to a totally different, track for graduation? And then lastly, are we going to look at, is it based on race? So there's going to be things that are triggers that it's based on race. There's always the easy, black student, white student. A lot of times people don't know about the national origin group, as I stated earlier. Left students, students with limited English proficiency, are all covered under Title VI. And to be completely honest with you, as an African American who started with the department because that was a big issue, the things that are happening to limited English proficient students are very, very, very alarming. We deal with refugee agencies where, these students are all lumped in a classroom together when the teacher doesn't speak the language and they're not getting any translation or interpretation services. You're getting things like that where you hear about it. I mean, we heard from a district once that any student that was thought to have a disability that was limited English proficient from another country, they said they wouldn't view it, they wouldn't even assess it because we don't know if it's not a language issue. So, things that are alarming that you can obviously tell this kid has developmental issues, they said it could be a language issue. So, that's what's going on in the left population. It's really, really alarming stuff.
But, I'm sorry, jump in. I remember I ran for office, and one of the things that we went through is trying to get the voter registration cards. And I'm not trying to get out the topic, but the point is, it wasn't, what they told us is we don't have to translate it into other languages because it's not federally mandated. So if it's not federally mandated, is it federally mandated? If you receive, any public school system receives FFA, as I stated before. Sure. If you receive FFA, you cannot discriminate against anybody on the basis of national origin. By not giving translation and interpretation services to a person who doesn't speak the language, you are discriminating against them essentially, and you have to provide them with it. Actually, school districts are supposed to have in their literature saying that all people who are limited English proficiency should know they are entitled to these services. And you're supposed to have it translated in a language they can understand. How is that possible when the administration isn't even required to learn or be taught a different language? How if the principal is an English-speaking or American-born person, and they have a 55% population of Latin American students, but they're still able to be the principal of that school? They're not taught that they're not taught that part of that person's language, but they're still capable of being a teacher or a principal for the school. But then you expect us to treat them differently. You expect the administration to treat them differently when it comes to the lower level learning portions. That doesn't make sense to me.
Wait, no, you're saying.
I'm sorry. Let me be very
No,
clear.
say it again.
Okay, you made a statement about LEPs and the fact that the students aren't getting what they need on the educational level. They're not being taught in the language that they understand, and you're not able to identify it. But if you have a principal that doesn't know the language, or you don't have administrators or teachers that don't know the language, how can you identify the problem if you all don't even speak the language?
Okay, well, here's the thing. First, if someone comes into your classroom that clearly doesn't speak the language, you need to contact someone from the district and say, I have a student here who doesn't know the language. That's simple. Even if you don't know the language, you can tell somebody you don't know the language. So after you contact someone and you say you don't know the language, the district is required to have some people in place who can say we're interpreters to these languages. We have districts that have language, they can have interpreters for over 270 languages. If you don't do that, there's Language Line. Language Line has over 500 different interpreters that'll get on the phone, talk to the person in the language. So there's a lot of opportunities. The fact that a principal not speaking language isn't an excuse and doesn't mean that they're not entitled to give these students these protections. There's a lot of things in place and they can be used. We've had districts who are model districts in Illinois
that use language line for all those particular situations.
But what I'm thinking about is the racial sensitivity, the cultural differences between a person that isn't aware of another culture or another race's nuances, and then how are they able to even identify or say that this is something that we need in this school population?
Well, if you recognize that there's someone, here's the thing about it. Let's go, and this is a great example. It's different treatment analysis. You, as a principal, might not be disabled, but you can recognize that a particular student is disabled. And you recognize that, and you recognize this particular student needs to receive some sort of accommodations. Now, you're not a specialist in disability, but you have people in place who can do it. Same thing with language. You might not recognize the language, but you recognize the student needs this particular help because he can't take full benefit of the program. Then there are avenues and there are things that you can use to do it. The principal is not, the onus first is not supposed to fall on the principal. One of the districts we had that was in real bad shape, they stopped buying translations for everybody, and they were in clear violation of Title VI. But what happens is there are things that the district needs to put in place. It's not it's not on a school level, it's a district-wide level. The district needs to have interpreters. The district needs to use language lines. The district needs to have a registration process where they can identify through a home language survey what is the language spoken at home. And then what do we need to do? Now, there's a lot of districts and a lot of places that have a huge population that doesn't speak English as a first language. They're able to do it if they take those steps. So really, it's just about doing it. And it's the same thing as with disability or anything that's treating someone differently. You've got to let them take full benefit of the program. So I'm not saying it's easy. I always tell people, when I walk into a school and a teacher says she had 27 different languages in the classroom, I look at her and I say, oh, you got some road ahead of you.
And how many languages did she speak? Just out of curiosity.
I think she might have spoke 3 or 4, but guess what happened? They actually got interpreters, they actually got language line, and all those kids were able to pass that math course because they started working with them, they started using the resources they had available.
Great.
The fact to say you're using the resources, not using the resources, is a big issue.
That's a great example. Thank you for sharing.
Okay. Go ahead.
Last one. All right. We have children that they speak English, but they need to be read to so that they can understand. Now, on top of that, we're teaching, and I'm not prejudiced against anybody, I love all kids, but we're teaching them English when our children need to be learned other languages. Because we have so many people coming in here, and it's a disadvantage to them. As they grow up, these children are going to know their language, and they're going to know English fluently, and it's going to knock out kids out the box.
Well, I see what you're saying, and that's kind of going outside the realm of what we're doing, because that's an issue more of being global and being able to
discrimination one day.
It might be one day, but as of right now, the majority of everything that's being taught is being taught in English. And so we can only look at what's going on right now. I understand what you're saying. It is an issue because we are becoming more global. But what happens is, if we have a student in the class that speaks Burmese, and math is taught in English, science is taught in English, social studies taught in English, we need to find out how that student can be able to take the lesson as opposed to, saying we're discriminating against the English speaker because he doesn't, know Burmese, because that's not how the lessons come. So that particular English student can still take full advantage of the educational opportunity. And that's what it boils down to for us. Can you take full advantage? And right now, they can take full advantage, where the student doesn't speak.
You're going to get a Burmese speaking person? You're going to go out to that country and hire them?
No, we can translate. There's translators who translate Burmese. There's translators who translate any language. In this area, particularly where we are, a lot of our translators come from this area. They have translators for almost every language that's spoken in the Metro Atlanta area.
For real?
Okay.
I'm just thinking of solutions. And I mean, almost in no disrespect to anyone of Spanish descent, but it's almost like the script is being flipped. And everywhere you go now, it's either English or Spanish. Even in the schools, English, Spanish, German. How about adding the African language, where everyone can learn their own language, or having translators to cover all that? But it's like in the classroom, we're having to learn everybody else's history and language but our own. So how about adding a little bit of chocolate?
Oh, I'm not, and what I'm saying to you is, I'm not saying that's not the case and that should be the case, but as far as what we're dealing with is, we're just dealing with, can you take advantage? So my thing is, if math is taught in German, and math is only taught in German, we're going to make sure every kid in the classroom has someone who can translate what they're saying into German. Because we're going to make sure they can take full advantage of the educational process. I understand what you're saying and what you're saying, but as of right now, while these classes are still taught in those ways, that's what we're in our office. Now, there might be someone else who can handle that, and I do think it's a legitimate issue, both with the state. But as far as OCR is concerned, we're just making sure that under Title VI, you receive federal financial aid. Everybody in your classroom should be able to take full advantage of the classroom, the activities out in the classroom, and so on and so forth. So I understand what you're saying completely, but it's not really what we're doing right now, but it is an issue that, I think it's going to become a bigger issue. Okay. All right, so I'm going to zoom through this. I already talked about that a little bit, so let me just I'll talk about hostile examples of harassing conduct and bullying, which is a big issue that we've come over lately. Now, when we talk about bullying in our office's initiative to attack bullying, it still has to be under one of the areas that we protect people. So, for instance, let's say someone's being bullied on the basis of their race, and there's a lot of racial slurs. We can all go through a list of them. That would be something we would look at. Also, threats or physical assault, those are based on race. We're going to beat up all the black kids, or we're going to do X, Y, Z to you because you're black. These would be all things we could look at from a harassment standpoint or a bullying standpoint because they were based on one of those protected areas that we look at. The same goes for sex, the same goes for age. If you're discriminating against a person, harassing them based on one of the things we can look at, then we can actually take a look at it.
You do gender identity?
Well, the gender issue is a big issue now. So in Title IX, initially when you said someone was gay, they wouldn't necessarily automatically have protection for us. But now things have changed because we're looking at gender stereotyping and gender identity. Are we saying you're acting a way that's perceived? So if I'm standing here and you all say, well, you're acting a way that's perceived that a woman would act, that would be something we could actually look at. Because there's perceived gender stereotyping and you're going against them. If that's the case, then we can look at it on the basis of sex. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, now, we talk about hostile environment. Someone mentioned earlier about the statement where you have a learning disability, you have a learning disability, you have a learning disability. Now, that might not be as hard as calling someone retarded, but it is conduct that's based on, their disability. Now, what we're going to look at next is it sufficiently severe, pervasive, or persistent. There's certain things that you can say one time that are so severe, it only needs to say one time, and we know that's harassing conduct. We all know those words. But then there are others that are, less severe. But then again, are they pervasive? Are they persistent? Am I hearing this every single day, whereas it's not as negative, but I'm hearing it every single day. And over the period of time, it could be a big issue. Is it stopping the kid from reading? You have a learning disability, so he stopped reading altogether because he heard it for the whole school year. Now, when we're looking at harassment, the way we're going to go through is these steps. Did the racially hostile environment exist? Was the one statement made? Was the least severe statement made over the course of the school year? That's the environment. So the first thing we're going to look at was a hostile environment created. The next thing we want to know is, did the recipient, so we'll say a district in this case, have notice of the hostile environment? Did they know? So someone is saying to your kid, you have a learning disability every single day and he doesn't have one. Did you go and tell the district and tell the principal or tell the teacher, hey, you keep saying that to him, he doesn't have a learning disability. You don't have to say hostile environment, but putting them on notice that you're aware of the particular problem. So that's the first step. And a lot of times people say, well, they created a hostile environment. You've got to notify them. Now, you don't always have to notify them. There are certain particular situations where they should have known better. Certain things that, everybody saw and they were put on notice and they were present for. Those are the situations you might not even notice from the particular parents. The next thing is, did they respond? So sometimes we'll have something, a hostile environment has been created, the school district is put on notice, and they did nothing. That, in our books, if it happened like that, will be a violation because the school district has to do a number of different things to, make sure a hostile environment doesn't actually exist.
Don't y'all know the school system cover their back?
Of course they cover their back, and we are aware of that.
I mean, and we can complain about it, and it will be put off on our children.
Well, here's the thing what we say. We tell parents and people who are advocates and anybody filing complaints, document everything. Don't ever go up and say, don't ever go up and say, I told them, because of course they can deny it.
Yeah.
Have an email. Have the email where you can send the email and say, hey, here's the email when I told them about the particular situation on this particular date at this particular time. Because then there's nothing they can do about that if you have it documented. So again, you want to, as with anything, you want to make sure you're documenting all the information, that you're getting and sending out. Now, a lot of lawyers will use this phrase, totality of the circumstances. And this goes back to what I was talking about when we're talking about creating a hostile environment. You got to look at all the circumstances combined. So, for instance, someone's saying something that's not a major, major statement, like that learning disability statement I've used, but you're saying it over a course of a year. After a year, and the student starts to internalize that and really thinks he can't do whatever is being said, then looking at the totality of the circumstances, the hostile environment has actually been created. So that's what, severe, pervasive, and persistent. Is it happening consistently enough? Is it something being reminded of? We had one case where a football coach was calling a student retarded. He kept saying, oh, you're retarded, you're a retard, you can't get this, you can't get this, you can't get this. Him saying that constantly in football practice, even though it wasn't even in the classroom, was something that was, pervasive and persistent enough where it rose to the level in our books it was harassment, and we did find a violation there. These are just some factors, a list of factors we, look at. We're trying to determine. We're going to look at the context. How was it said? We're going to look at the scope. We're going to look at the frequency, duration, how long it was being said for, the location of the incidents, where they happened. Also, we're going to look at the relationship between the parties involved. With the teacher-student. A teacher-student statement can be a lot more harsh and a lot more, can inflict a lot more pain than maybe a student-to-student statement. Because, this person is a person of authority. And this is the way we say a school has noticed or the school learns about it. A student tells, a parent tells, a complaint is filed. We had one school district that told us they had no idea that a student was being harassed or felt they were being harassed. But then the parent had filed a complaint 6 months before, and they said, oh, well, yeah, they did file a complaint. But that's notice. You file a complaint, they're on notice, they know something is going on. Now, when we talk about reasonable care to ensure that students are not subject to racial discrimination, there's a lot of different things that school districts do when they recognize harassment. So what they possibly do is, we've had situations where schools had school-wide sensitivity training, district-wide sensitivity training. All the teachers would get made trained, all the staff. We've had situations like that. In the sexual harassment case, a lot of times we had anonymous surveys where everyone in the school district, the school actually sent out surveys asking, who had been a victim or felt they had been a victim of sexual harassment, and then they published those things, and then they had training after. So there's a lot of different things that a district or a school or university can do to remedy harassment. This is just more of our analysis, and I got to rush now.
Yeah.
Now what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate the appropriateness of the response to the action. We're going to say, okay, if there was a sexual harassment complaint, and you held racial sensitivity training, is that appropriate? Probably not, because it's not related to what the actual complaint was. So we're going to look at, is it appropriate? Is it trying to remedy whatever the particular issue that led to the allegation or led to the complaint was? And this just also is going to go to more to what we're going to look at when we're evaluating the school's response. If it happened in January, you don't do anything until December, that's not going to be appropriate because it's a long, long time. Also, is it tailored to the specific problem experience? Is it race, but you're doing sexual harassment training? Also, was it recently calculated to prevent further, reoccurrence and ensure that participants are not restricted? We had a particular case where it was a sexual harassment complaint, one student versus another student, and the way the school thought to remedy was to put the kids in the same class for the rest of the school year. That probably isn't appropriate, probably not the best thing to do in those particular situations. And these are just a couple things we want to look at when we're coming on how school districts respond. We want to prevent retaliation. So going back to that statement of putting the two people who were involved in the same classroom, what's to say this couldn't happen again? Or what's to say, one particular person is upset and what do you think the other person did to them, or if they got in trouble or something along those lines. We want to try to prevent those particular situations. Also, we want to make sure it stays confidential. In these particular situations, it can be really, really painful for particular people, and they don't want all that information put out. So the school has to find a way to deal with that, where all that confidential information doesn't get out to everyone else. And these are just some of the things we've seen in the past that have been used and that we've looked at and said were appropriate responses and appropriate remedies. And as I said, you have training for students, new policies and procedures, remedies for victims, and disciplinary action against the harasser. If you go to our website, Department of Education, and go to the OCR link, there will be a link to a bunch of different topics if you need to find out any more information. They're related to anything that we enforce. So really, that's your best resource. And one thing I can say about our website is they do a good job of putting it in plain language. So they have a lot of question and answer sessions. So if you have a question, you know, it can be answered out so that you can understand it's not all the legalese and confusing to everybody involved. So definitely take advantage of that as well. That is my last slide, and I had to rush through that. I'm sorry about that, but I want to thank you guys for having me today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so very much, Andy.
You know, one of the things we didn't get to do when we first came in, if we could quickly just come go around the room, just tell me your name, school cluster you're in, if you know it, if you still have a child in school, and I'm gonna hold you to 15 seconds for real. And what got you here? Starting here.
Angela Fields, no children, no school cluster, just interested in this initiative.
You live in Gwinnett?
I don't, I live in Fulton.
Okay, that's a folks. Okay.
Dorothy White, grandmother of 2 kids in school. That's my interest.
I'm sorry.
It's
I was rude.
That's why we wait. Renee Kudamar, mother of 4, grandmother of 10, and it was personal for me, and I just was determined to go on because I want to help as many children as I can. Sorry if I'm not the
Terry Williams, near cluster, and I also work at Georgia Gwinnett College, so education is ongoing. And I have a child, so it's very exciting.
Diana Curtis, what got me interested is I'm the mother of this beautiful 10th grader who goes to Mountain View, and even though we don't have any behavior issues, as someone said over there, just because our child got through, doesn't mean we should participate in the process.
Selena Brand, Gwinnett County Public School. For me, I'm here because of the retaliation and discrimination in Gwinnett County and education, trying to get some education.
I'm Sabrina Smith with Gwinnett Citizens for Responsible Government. We advocate for openness and transparency, and we would like for Gwinnett County Public Schools to be more open and transparent.
Let's continue. We're gonna, let's go around so we won't get.
Okay, I'm Faith Hayes. I work with families who have children who are impacted with developmental disabilities and special health care needs. And I am in Fulton County, and this email was sent to me by a coworker.
I'm Stephanie Wright, and I live in the Duluth cluster, but my kids go to online school deals, and I was just going into the board of trustees, that's why I'm here. But I also was Jim Fox blog writer for Conscious.
Oh, hey. Patrice.
I'm Patrice. I live in Cobb County, but I work here at the Boys and Girls Club, and we're really interested in creating a very strong advocacy for our parents, so we decided to get involved.
I'm Tamara Clark. The cluster of schools, I believe, is Prudenville, Norcross, and Peachtree Elementary. I am a part of the Boys and Girls Club of the Parent Committee Board, so I'm piggybacking on what Patrice said, and it is also a personal issue as well.
I'm Constance Alexander. I am raising my grandson who's in Norcross Elementary, and he also attends the Boys and Girls Club, and I am also part of the parent committee. So this was offered to me as an opportunity to find out what's going on with the school system and how to help other kids and the parents.
Good afternoon, my name is Toyasha Vaughn. I'm mother of two. Actually, my daughters attend here as well. My daughters go to Title I school, Gilbert Elementary. All of it is new to me. I found out about this through my supervisor, who forwarded me the promotional information about today. And I also work with high school students in Atlanta in an at-risk college career readiness program that I manage and work with the students. And so it kind of came full circle for me, and I'm very interested in policy, educational policy, in regards to how it affects our children. It is proportionate.
My name is Adrienne Goss. I'm a high school teacher in Atlanta Public Schools, and I'm a student at Georgia State University researching the school to prison pipeline and community organizations.
My name is Kathy Timmons, and I'm in the Shallow Cluster Middle School. I have two middle schoolers, and I like sharing information. I like knowing what I'm talking about, and I've learned so much from being in this PLI class. So that's what I'm here.
Hello, my name is Alberta Aline. I am a parent of a middle schooler in the Grayson cluster, and I've been an educator for many years, and I want to be a parent that's pretty much involved with a child's education. I'm also interested in developing an institution for adults and creating skill sets for employment. So,
my name is Joanna Weathers, and I live in the Mill Creek cluster. I have two graduates in Mill Creek High School. I chose to get involved with the PLI because my children, I'm an empty nester, and not just because I needed something to do, but because one of my initiatives is dismantling the school to prison pipeline for our African American men who I see on a daily basis, who come and empty my trash in my office at Gwinnett County government. So to see a young man who could have been my son, if I had a son, and being young and just really getting angry about that, I got involved.
So those would be the prisoners from the Gwinnett County jail?
Yes.
Just so that you know.
Yes.
Angela?
Angela Relaford. I am just a helper.
And you also work for the PLI?
Yes.
I'm Penny Poole. I have two sons who graduated the North Cross cluster, and I've just been getting involved in advocacy in the Gwinnett County community in general.
My name is Jen Falk. I am a former school board candidate here for District 3. I had two children who graduated from the Duluth cluster, and I'm also a co-founder of this organization.
My name is Regina Butler Streets. I'm the proud mother of 3 children. I became involved with Gwinnett Stop due to a personal issue. I have since transitioned 2 of my children out of the Gwinnett County school system, working on the last child. I can currently say that I'm pursuing an education towards advocacy for our children, preferably those that are being targeted, which is our black males. So I can say officially I'm on the quest. Probably in the future I'll run for a political office if God deems it necessary.
My name is Lita Calvert. I'm a parent of a senior at Norcross. And I would have to say, this is my second year. I graduated last year from this program and just enjoy the knowledge that comes forth. And my passion was unleashed when I moved from DeKalb County to Gwinnett to see what's happening with our kids. I'm about the kids, being a voice for the kids as well.
Well, I just want to take a moment and applaud you all. This is phenomenal. But I won't stand between you and lunch any longer. So lunch is served, it is ready, and enjoy. And we'll circle back. This is going to be kind of a working lunch. I forgot to say